Yes!
The launch of the Shadowkeep DLC was a very interesting time for Destiny 2 for multiple reasons. Eris Morn returned as an NPC and Eris Moon returned as a patrol zone. Of course, this was brand new to anybody who never played Destiny 1, but in my opinion, the most interesting addition to the game was the Nightfall Ordeal and the champions. And in this video, we'll discuss what the Nightfall Ordeal is and what champions are. So without further ado, let's get it in. Alright, so first off, let's talk about the differences between the regular weekly Nightfall strikes and the Nightfall Ordeal. Now, if you click on the Vanguard node on the destination screen and scroll all the way over to the right, you will see a node titled Nightfall. Above the green launch button exists the name of the Nightfall strike itself, but if you click on the name of the Nightfall strike, you will notice that there are two other Nightfall strikes you could choose from. Now, every weekly reset, there'll be 3 different weekly Nightfall strikes. Now, be advised that these strikes have a recommended power level of 820, and once you load in, all of your equipment is locked, which means that you can't change any of your gear until you leave the strike. Now, Xur, the exotic loot vendor that arrives in the game every Friday after the daily reset, sells a legendary item known as the Nightfall Challenge card. This item enables you to set a power handicap and select the elemental singe and up to 3 negative modifiers such as extinguish, match game, and momentum. Understand that only the fire team leader has to have a Nightfall Challenge card because only their Nightfall Challenge card makes a difference in the weekly Nightfalls, meaning that you don't actually have to have a challenge card of your own. Oh yeah, and before I forget, these strikes don't have matchmaking, meaning that you'll be rolling solo unless you have a fire team consisting of people you actually know. The majority of the strikes in the game have their own strike exclusive loot, and these items can only be obtained if a strike is one of the weekly Nightfalls or from the Nightfall Ordeal, and I'll explain what the Nightfall Ordeal is later. The drop rate of strike exclusive loot is very random, and you would think that increasing their overall difficulty via the negative modifiers and power handicap would increase their drop rate, but that's far from the truth. So unless you simply want to challenge yourself, there's not any real benefit from applying the negative modifiers. Without sugarcoating anything, I go ahead and say that if you aren't after any of the strike exclusive loot, the 3 weekly Nightfalls are very pointless and aren't capable of dropping pinnacle gear or powerful gear. I mean, I believe that you can only get the strike emblem variants from the Nightfalls, but I digress. Now, the Nightfall Ordeal is a completely different animal. Unlike the 3 weekly Nightfall strikes, there's always one Nightfall Ordeal present each week, and it has 5 different difficulties with 5 different recommended power levels: 750 for Adept, 970 for Hero, 1000 for Legend, 1030 for Master, and 1050 for Grandmaster. Unlike the 3 weekly Nightfalls, completion of the Nightfall Ordeal yields better loot drops depending on the difficulty. And if you scroll through the different difficulties, you'll see the different loot drops consisting of Ascended Shards, Ascended Prisms, and Exotic Armor. And as far as I'm aware, it's not possible to attain Ascended Shards unless you complete the Nightfall Ordeal, craft them at the Gunsmith, or from the Trials of Osiris Lighthouse chest. So if you don't do any of the 3, you won't be able to masterwork your armor, unfortunately. No differently than the 3 weekly Nightfalls, the Legend, Master, and Grandmaster difficulties of the Nightfall Ordeal don't have matchmaking and will lock your loadout, so make sure that you choose your loadout wisely. If you want the pinnacle engram reward from the Nightfall Ordeal, you will have to obtain 100,000 points within the Nightfall, but this is only possible on Legend difficulty or higher, as the lower difficulties don't grant enough points. At least this is how it was in the previous 2 seasons, so if I'm not correct about this, feel free to correct me in the comment section. Now remember the negative modifiers that we talked about earlier? Each Ordeal Nightfall has these, but they can't be picked and chosen like those for the regular weekly Nightfalls. The Nightfall Ordeal negative modifiers exist to be the biggest inconvenience ever, and the higher the difficulty means that you'll have more of these modifiers to deal with. Now let's talk about the champions. Champions are major level enemies that have their own exclusive mechanics that they'll combat you with, and unless you counter these mechanics, you won't be able to defeat them, but I'll explain this later. Champions come in 3 different variants, consisting of Barrier, Overload, and Unstoppable, and each of the 4 enemy factions only has 2 of the 3. Cabal and Hive have Unstoppable champions, and Fallen and Vex have Overload champions. I didn't mention Barrier champions because all 4 enemy factions have them, and there isn't a single enemy race in the game that has all 3 of the different champion types. The champions are always the same type of enemy too, meaning that if a Cabal themed strike is the weekly Nightfall Ordeal, you will know ahead of time that you'll be fighting Barrier Colossuses and Unstoppable Incendiors. I think I pronounced that right. But anyways, for the Fallen, it's always Barrier Servitors and Overload Captains, and for the Vex, it's always Barrier Hobgoblins and Overload Minotaurs. And for the Hive, it's always Barrier Knights and Unstoppable Ogres. Now that we're a bit more familiar with the champions, we could talk about how to defeat them. Now, Barrier champions, as their name indicates, have the ability to summon an impenetrable barrier that will heal them completely if the barrier isn't broken. Overload champions are overly aggressive, overly evasive, and overly annoying, and unless they're stunned or repeatedly taking damage, they also have the ability to completely heal themselves. Unstoppable champions will hunt you down to the ends of the earth until they're stunned. They're a lot like Overload champions, but they can't heal themselves as far as I'm aware, and they have a lot more health. The only way that you can combat these enemies is if you have a weapon equipped with an anti-champion mod from the seasonal artifact, or if you're using one of the 4 exotic weapons with their own intrinsic anti-champion perks. At the time I'm recording this video, it's season 10 and only hand cannons, sidearms, SMGs, and swords are able to equip anti-champion mods from the seasonal artifact. Divinity, the Garden of Salvation raid trace rifle is strong against Overload champions. Ariana's Vow is strong against Barrier champions, and Leviathan's Breath and Devil's Ruin are both strong against Unstoppable champions. Understand that you must kill each and every one of the champions in an Ordeal Nightfall in order to receive the best rewards. Even if you miss a single champion, your chance of getting the best possible loot is reduced, so always make sure that every champion has been defeated when you're running Ordeal Nightfalls. Now last but not least, I want to talk about the 1050 power level recommended Grandmaster Nightfall. This difficulty was newly added in Season of the Worthy and is the most grueling Nightfall difficulty in the history of the Destiny franchise. Despite the fact that the power level recommendation is 1050, you don't receive any advantages past power level 1025, meaning that you'll be dealing significantly less damage to the enemies while almost anything can kill you in one shot. Now Bungie stated that the Grandmaster difficulty will always be available for the final couple of weeks of each season, and if you complete all of the Ordeal Nightfalls on the Grandmaster difficulty, you will unlock the Conqueror Triumph seal. And as of presently, the loot drops from the Grandmaster Nightfall aren't the best, so if you aren't after the Conqueror title, this difficulty won't have much to offer to you, so I would suggest sticking to the Legend and Master difficulties until this changes. Well everybody, that does it for this one. I hope that you enjoyed what you watched. If you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor and thumb rest to that like button till it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you don't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.